something is happening inside the Cleveland Browns locker room that the coaching staff never expected, and definitely didn't want the public to see. For the first time all season, Shedeur Sanders' teammates are openly stepping forward, not just to praise him, but to defend him, and to expose what's really been going on behind the scenes. These aren't vague compliments or friendly sound bites. These are pointed, direct statements that completely contradict the narrative Kevin Stefanski has been pushing since week 1. It started with a simple comment from Wyatt Teller, one that sounded harmless until you listen closely. "When you got a confident quarterback," he said, "it makes me go out there and be more confident." In one sentence, he revealed everything the players were feeling but weren't saying. The offense only looks alive when Shedeur is under center. Not Flacco, not Rudolph, not Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur. And then it got even more explosive. Jerry Jeudy admitted the offense spent the entire season reacting to whoever's back there, exposing how unstable the quarterback situation has been. Meanwhile, Shedeur himself made a shocking comment about making sure he's around next year, hinting he still doesn't feel secure, even while breaking records and carrying the offense. Put all these pieces together, and a new picture starts forming. A picture of a locker room that has chosen its quarterback, and a coaching staff that still refuses to accept it, because the story unfolding in Cleveland isn't just about football anymore. It's about loyalty, power, and the moment a team decides enough is enough. Before the interviews went viral, and before anyone realized what the Browns players were actually saying, there was a subtle moment that completely shifted the tone of the season. The film room, in practice, and in the silent glances players exchanged every time Shedeur Sanders made a play that the coaching staff pretended not to notice. For weeks, players watched Shedeur operate with a calm, almost unnerving level of control. He'd make throws he wasn't supposed to make as a fourth-string rookie. He'd recover from pressure like he'd seen the blitz coming 5 seconds earlier. And every time he did something that separated him from the other quarterbacks, you could see the veterans look at each other as if to say, "Why isn't this guy on the field?" The coaching staff didn't want that question asked. The players couldn't stop asking it. And that's where the fracture began. Wyatt Teller's comments weren't just praise. They were confirmation of a conversation the locker room had been having for months. When he said Shedeur's confidence made him more confident, he was admitting something the coaching staff probably didn't want public. The offense simply felt different with Shedeur behind center. Not because of hype, not because of favoritism, but because the players could feel the momentum shift the moment he entered the huddle. And you don't get that kind of reaction unless something had been building for a long time. Reports claim there were moments in practice where Shedeur would deliver a throw so sharp, so perfectly timed, that defensive starters would stop mid-vep and shake their heads. Not out of frustration, out of respect. That's when the divide between the locker room and the coaching staff started widening. Players were seeing something Stefanski wasn't acknowledging, and the more they saw, the harder it became to stay quiet. So when Teller sat down for his interview and said those words, "When you got a confident quarterback," it wasn't a random compliment. It was a declaration the locker room had been holding inside for months. Had been with the pulse of their own team. And once one player broke the silence, the rest didn't hold back. Because Teller's message wasn't the end of the story. It was the spark that made everyone else start speaking up. While the outside world assumed the Browns had some sort of structured quarterback plan, the players were living through something entirely different. Something far more chaotic than any fan realized. For months, the team had been operating without a true leader under center. And Jerry Jeudy finally said the quiet part out loud when he admitted they'd been taking it week by week, with whoever's back there. That one line revealed everything. Receivers had no rhythm. The timing routes were inconsistent. The huddle chemistry reset every Sunday. In the NFL, where timing can be the difference between a touchdown and an interception, that kind of instability isn't just inconvenient. It's destructive, and players felt it every single week. One moment, they'd prepare for a veteran who relied on quick reads. The next, they'd be adjusting to a rookie who didn't command the pocket. Then, suddenly, another quarterback would take over with a completely different style. It wasn't football, it was roulette, and the locker room was tired of it. When Shedeur finally stepped in, even without reps, structure instantly returned. Jeudy didn't just praise his ability, he praised the stability that he brought, something the team hadn't felt all year. Shedeur commanded the huddle. He made real-time adjustments. He communicated with receivers the way seasoned quarterbacks do, not rookies buried at the bottom of the depth chart. That shift wasn't subtle, it was seismic. Jeudy openly acknowledged that Shedeur's presence allowed the offense to finally grow in this system. That's not just support. That's a direct indictment of the situation before he arrived. It means the players knew the offense never had a fair chance to develop because it was being reset every time the quarterback changed. And yet, the coaching staff kept forcing those changes. It's no wonder players have been stepping forward now. They watched a season slip away because the one quarterback capable of stabilizing everything was kept off the field until injuries made resistance impossible. They saw the offense come alive the moment Shedeur played, and they knew the season could have been different if he'd been trusted earlier. So, when Jeudy praised Shedeur's growth, timing, and consistency, he wasn't just hyping up a rookie. He was revealing the truth the team had lived through all season long. The Browns finally look like an offense because they finally have a quarterback. And this was only the beginning of players exposing how deep the divide really goes. From the outside, Kevin Stefanski's decision to start Dillon Gabriel looked logical. More college starts, more experience, more time running structured offenses. Analysts repeated that explanation so often, it became the default narrative. But inside the locker room, where players see everything up close, that reasoning never made sense. They weren't buying it. And as the season unfolded, it became clear why. Players could see the difference in talent immediately. They saw the velocity on Shedeur's throws, the touch on his deep balls, the eye discipline he brought to progressions, traits you don't get from college experience alone. And while Gabriel may have had the resume, teammates noticed he didn't command the room the way Shedeur did. That's something you can't teach. It shows up in moments, not statistics. But the biggest red flag wasn't talent. It was treatment. Rumors inside the building suggested Stefanski never wanted him as the long-term starter. Those claims are unverified, but the evidence players saw every day fueled suspicion. First-team reps going to quarterbacks struggling with timing. Shedeur quietly buried at fourth string. And a system that seemed designed to justify those decisions. Players aren't blind. They saw the coaching staff shaping a narrative before Shedeur ever touched the field. And that created tension. Real tension. Because when the locker room believes in a player the coach won't even consider, a divide starts forming. Slowly at first, then rapidly as the evidence piles up. And once Shedeur stepped onto the field and instantly produced, the divide became impossible to ignore. The moment he threw his first touchdown, the players' belief was validated. The moment he led a late-game drive, their trust deepened. And the moment he showed more growth in 3 games than players' instincts became undeniable. That's why Jeudy, Teller, and others are speaking so freely now. They feel vindicated. They watched the coaching staff resist the quarterback who was clearly the best option. And they're not hiding their frustration anymore. But nothing captured that tension more clearly than the one moment that made every reporter in the room stop. The moment Shedeur revealed how he feels about his future in Cleveland. The interview was supposed to be routine. A few questions about the offensive line, some thoughts on losing Ethan Posick, maybe a quick summary of how the offense would adjust. Nothing dramatic, nothing controversial. But the moment Shedeur Sanders opened his mouth, the entire mood in the room shifted. Reporters leaned forward, cameras tightened, because everyone could hear the weight behind his words before he even finished the sentence. I truthfully hope I can play with him next year. I hope he's around next year. Make sure I'm around too next year. There was no smile, no joke, no attempt to soften the tone. Just a calm, deliberate statement that hung in the air like a warning shot. And instantly, fans and analysts started asking the same question the locker room already knew the answer to. Why would a rookie quarterback who's breaking records, winning games, and carrying the offense need to make sure he's around? Because players can feel when they're being embraced, and they can feel when someone in the building wants them gone. Reports suggest Shedeur has sensed the tension for months. The lack of first-team reps, the refusal to elevate him even when the offense was sinking. The way praise from teammates didn't seem to influence the coaching decisions. Even when he dominated in limited opportunities, he wasn't treated like a rising franchise leader. He was treated like someone who needed to earn trust twice as hard as anyone else. So when he said those words, they weren't random. They were intentional. It was his way of acknowledging what everyone in the locker room already understood. The coach didn't choose him. The players did. And that's why this moment hit so hard. Quarterbacks who feel secure don't talk like that. Franchise guys don't feel the need to imply they might not be wanted. But Shedeur's pause, followed by that quiet, controlled declaration, revealed the truth he'd kept to himself all season. He knows he's fighting more than defenses. He's fighting perception. He's fighting politics. He's fighting a system that didn't expect him to succeed. And instead of backing down, he made one thing clear. He's not leaving. He's not fading. And he's not letting anyone push him out of Cleveland. But the impact of that comment didn't end there, because the offensive line had something even more revealing to say next. What happened next didn't come from a wide receiver or a flashy skill player. It came from the group that sees everything up close, the offensive line. These are the guys who feel every hit, hear every cadence, and know instantly whether a quarterback is confident or rattled. And when they started talking about the chaos they'd survived this season, the truth about Cleveland's dysfunction became impossible to hide. Wyatt Teller didn't sugarcoat anything. He admitted the O-line has been shuffled so many times this year that the group barely resembled what they expected back in training camp. Injuries, replacements, rookie starters, veterans playing out of position. It was a revolving door. Teller even said if someone told him he'd be lining up next to certain players in Week 15, he wouldn't have believed it. That kind of instability destroys most offenses. Yet somehow, the moment Shedeur stepped in, the offense finally clicked. And that wasn't a coincidence. Teller explained exactly why. Shedeur's mobility forces defenses to stay disciplined, which means the O-line gets breathing room they never had with the other quarterbacks. When defenders can't rush recklessly because the quarterback might break contain, the line's job instantly gets easier. That's not just talent, it's influence. That's a rookie changing the geometry of the field. Then came the moment that really exposed how disconnected Stefanski's narrative has been from the players' lived reality. Teller admitted that the confidence Shedeur plays with has become contagious. It spreads through the huddle. It sharpens focus. It gives the line something they haven't had all year: belief. That's why this matters so much. Because Teller wasn't just praising a young quarterback, he was indirectly highlighting what the team lacked before Shedeur arrived. If confidence is contagious now, it means uncertainty was contagious before. The instability at quarterback didn't just inconvenience the offense, it infected it. And every lineman felt it. Joe Bitonio added another layer when he described Luke Whippler as the younger brother of the group. Quirky, unpredictable, someone you have to keep in check. That might sound like harmless locker room teasing, but in the context of everything else, it reveals something deeper. The veterans understand how to mentor young players. They know how to guide them with support, not suppression. That's the exact opposite of how Stefanski handled Shedeur. Now the truth was out. The offensive line didn't just accept Shedeur. They were relieved to finally have him. And once the line publicly aligned behind him, the pressure shifted entirely onto the coaching staff. By the time the interviews finished circulating online, one thing had become undeniable: the Cleveland Browns locker room had unified behind Shedeur Sanders in a way that no one, not even the coaching staff, could ignore anymore. What started as a few subtle comments quickly snowballed into a wave of support, then exposed just how deep the frustration had been all season. And the more the players spoke, the clearer it became that this wasn't just about praising a teammate. It was about reclaiming control from a coaching staff that had lost the locker room months ago. The most telling part wasn't even what players said about Shedeur. It was what they implied about everything that came before him. Jerry Jeudy openly described an offense operating in survival mode, adjusting to whoever's back there, instead of building around a real leader. Teller admitted the group had been forced to adapt to chaos, dealing with injuries, shuffling personnel, and inconsistent quarterback play. Bitonio talked about young players needing and inconsistent guidance, something the veterans were happy to provide, something the coaching staff seemed to misunderstand entirely when it came to Shedeur. And when you stack all these comments together, a new picture forms. It wasn't just that Shedeur made the offense better. It's that the offense never had a chance until he stepped in. Reports claim players had been privately frustrated long before any of them spoke publicly. They saw potential being wasted. They saw opportunities slipping away. And they saw a coaching staff stubbornly clinging to a plan that wasn't working, not because it was the best football decision, but because it protected their own narrative. What the players said this week didn't just challenge that narrative, it shattered it. Because when both your top receiver and your key offensive lineman use the same word, contagious, to describe a rookie's impact, that's not coincidence. And that means something dangerous for Kevin Stefanski. He's no longer the one the locker room is following. Now the team has a quarterback they believe in, a quarterback they trust, a quarterback they want to build around. The only question left is whether the coaching staff will get on board or get left behind. But the biggest explosion was still coming, when Shedeur's presence started affecting not just morale, but the entire future of the franchise. As the momentum around Shedeur Sanders kept growing, the Browns suddenly found themselves backed into a corner they never expected to face this season. What started as a desperate mid-year adjustment had now become a full-blown franchise crossroads. And the truth is, the organization is running out of places to hide. Because the more Shedeur plays, the more he exposes the decisions that held the team back for months, and the more his teammates make it clear who they want leading them into the future. Players aren't just praising Shedeur's confidence, they're talking about the offense transforming around him. They're talking about rhythm, timing, belief, things you don't fake, and things you don't get from a quarterback rotation that changes every other week. And every comment from Teller, Jeudy, or Bitonio doesn't just lift Shedeur up, it points directly at something deeper: the frustration with a coaching staff that refused to see what they saw. Rumors suggest certain veterans were already questioning whether they wanted to remain in Cleveland if the team continued ignoring the locker room's voice. Reports claim some were even considering forcing their way out if the situation didn't change. That's how serious the divide had become. And now, after Shedeur's breakout performances, that divide can't be brushed aside or spun into a media-friendly talking point. It's out in the open. But what really shook the franchise was Shedeur's own subtle warning. When he said, "I'm going to make sure I'm around too next year," it wasn't cockiness. It was a reminder that even the most talented young players have options in today's NFL. And when a rookie quarterback, one who just put up historic numbers, has to reassure the world that he'll make sure he's still on the roster next season, that reflects poorly on one person, Kevin Stefanski. Because players don't talk like that when they feel supported. They talk like that when they feel the ground shifting beneath them. Now ownership has a decision to make. Do they continue backing a coach whose judgment is being questioned by his own locker room? Or do they recognize what's unfolding? That the players have already chosen their leader, and that leader is Shedeur Sanders. One path protects the coach, the other protects the future. And the Browns can't delay the choice much longer, because Shedeur's impact isn't slowing down, it's growing. And what happened next would make the situation impossible to ignore. By the end of this whirlwind stretch, the Browns found themselves facing a truth they could no longer outrun. Shedeur Sanders didn't just revive their offense. He exposed everything that had been holding it back. What began as a cautious experiment has become the defining storyline of Cleveland's season. Because the moment Shedeur stepped under center, the entire identity of the team shifted, and the players felt it first. Wyatt Teller's raw honesty, Jerry Jeudy's growing excitement, and the offensive line's renewed energy weren't random flashes of support. They were symptoms of a culture awake, and that's exactly why the tension around Kevin Stefanski has reached a boiling point. Reports claim he was hesitant to hand Shedeur the reins, even as players were quietly asking for it. Rumors suggest key veterans questioned whether the coach truly understood what the locker room needed, whether he realized how much was slipping away. Which brings the Browns to the moment that will define everything moving forward. Do they align with the coach who tried to keep the door closed? Or do they follow the quarterback who kicked it open? Because if there's one thing this season has proven, it's that the players aren't confused about their future. They've chosen their leader. They've chosen the guy whose presence makes them sharper, hungrier, and more confident. They've chosen Shedeur Sanders. And now the question that will echo through Cleveland is simple. Will the organization choose him too, or risk losing the one player capable of saving everything?